challenges we'll navigate, helping them become the best and elevate. Oh yeah, rising above, reaching for the sky, unlocking potential we won't deny. In the sweet spot, we'll pave the way, transform the leaders.
Welcome back, my friends, to the Sweet Spot, where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, my two co-hosts, Howard Holton, Paul Lewis.
Level Up. That song is growing on me. I don't know if I enjoyed it before, but now I'm getting down to it. It's good.
Oh,
Well,
I've always
it's
liked
custom
it.
as well.
I kind of do a little dance.
Little shimmy, yeah, little shake.
Right? I like it. Although it stutters at exactly the same point every time for me.
Does it?
It does.
Oh,
Like 3 seconds in, it gives a little stutter, and I just have to go. I feel like Max Headroom. Right? I really like. I don't want an AI avatar of myself. I want a Max Headroom style AI avatar of myself that every now and again just kind of freezes
On purpose. Nice.
So Howard is somewhere else. We're home. Any new stuff in the next couple of weeks? You guys are traveling? Where are you going?
I was in Howard City last week, and what I really wanted to happen, but I didn't think of it early enough, was to go to Howard's house and do the podcast from his place. That would have been brilliant.
That would have been really good. Like that, it would have been good. I have no other words for that. It would have been spectacular. I don't mind being the butt of a good joke as long as it's a good joke.
Right. Now, since my business in Denver went well, the likelihood I come back to Denver is high. Therefore, we will try to organize that.
Therefore, I will miss you more often.
Yes,
That's-
exactly. Exactly.
I'm still reeling from the time you and I were both stuck in the San Francisco airport for 4 hours, not knowing that either of us were stuck there, and I caught an earlier flight to get home, not realizing we could have spent the 4 hours together. I'm still disappointed about that.
That's correct.
That's gonna bother me at least for the rest of the fiscal year.
But now at least I have full access to your calendar, so
That is true.
we now can synchronize at will.
That is true. Also, you notice I don't have full access to your calendar, which makes me the smarter of us.
I keep yours up on the screen at all times, just
That's
to
awesome.
make sure
In case.
I'm keeping tabs.
Yeah, just in case.
Every so often I'll text you, hey, how's that meeting going?
Yeah. Oh, I had a weird one happen. I did a webinar last week, and a Scott Davis was
Scott
commenting.
Davis? Yes, I'm familiar.
Right. So of course I had to text him out of band and go, "Hey, are you in my webinar right now?"
Nice. And
So
was it him or some other Scott Davis?
It absolutely was him. And then we had the kind of Muppet style running commentary of the webinar. I'm telling you, somebody needs to put us in a balcony and pay us, Paul.
That
We would be so good at that.
What we can
can
do,
actually
I'm going to throw this out.
create the video now. Do you want to be Muppet style?
No, we just want to be able to make commentary. But we're about to go to a conference to which we could be sitting relatively close in the audience for keynotes and record using our device our commentary as we're hearing it. So possibly.
That is true. We could set up a nice little live stream of it in a really fun and funny way.
Yes.
That would be hilarious.
Something to consider. It is a relatively large arena, but
yeah, but what I wonder is, do they do like most of the conferences do and have the keynote projected to TVs that are scattered throughout?
Yes, they
So
do
why don't we
that.
do that?
And there's rooms that are over, what are they called? The exception rooms when they run out of space.
Yeah, the overflows.
Overflows, yeah. And they're live too, right? So you can click on the live show.
Right.
We can do it arguably. Yep.
Right.
I'm on camera an hour after the keynote. So
Nice.
I have an ability to I have 60 minutes to consume everything in the keynote, to assimilate my thoughts on it in preparation for a 40-minute juggernaut of online presence.
Huh. Takes you 60 minutes to do that, huh?
Yeah. As you're walking out, you've already formulated your response. I got it.
So with everything that is happening, AI is a topic. So
Never heard of it.
you really? Aren't you automatically implanted a chip or something?
That'd be awesome. No.
That is why his hair's short.
That's right.
Easier to get the cranial implants in.
And I haven't got my my Google Next haircut done yet, so it's going to be shorter.
So with everything that is happening, are companies getting more mature in their use of AI, how they're helping people, how they're enabling the different apps that they're building or that they have, or are we still way back and that's just an utopia that we are not even close to that?
I mean, we have a platform problem. I'm so tired of that word, by the way.
Which
Platform.
one?
Platforms.
Platform?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was with a vendor and I had just kind of like, I've been on the road since January with no, I think I've had like 4 or 5 days home in a row is my longest sprint.
Nice.
So the travel does get a little bit tiring after a while. And you kind of hear the same thing over and over and over again. And it just becomes a little tiring. And so I had a vendor talk about, what do you think about platform? And I went, would you just stop saying platform? Just stop it. And they're like, why? And I said, because all the platform means is I have to figure out how to use it because you don't know. I have to figure out how to get value from it because you don't know. We're giving you a bunch of tools. Cool. You've given me a toolbox, but you haven't told me what I should be fixing.
Right.
Right. Like, I'm so tired of the word platform. And that's where I think everybody keeps getting into trouble because we've been conditioned to believe that platforms are our future, much like the children are. And therefore, that's what we should be buying, right? We shouldn't buy these silos. We shouldn't keep things siloed. We should be buying platforms. But platforms don't really solve problems. They're just a toolbox.
That's
and
right.
if you know what to do with the toolbox, great. But if you just went like, hey, I just need do you have that little pink, like homemaker's toolbox? Mom's first toolbox. Oh, that was fantastic. I'm not
Is that
sure.
an auto zoom? That's pretty
Right?
Yeah.
Come on, zoom out. Zoom out. All right.
fun.
Well, I guess this is the view for now. I hope you all like it.
That's hilarious.
Right?
Is
But
this your DSLR?
no, I'm at a hotel, right? So
Okay.
this is my portable 4K OBSBot camera.
Got it.
And what I need to do is get it to zoom back out. Anyways, I'll figure that out. It doesn't matter.
Let me give color commentary while you're doing that. So, platform, I agree with you in that if you can't describe what it should do, it doesn't do a lot, or you have to invent the do-ness. And I buy platform when the cell 2 is like a development team, right? Because the goal is I can build lots of things on this development platform, so therefore it's a development platform. But when it's a platform that I could implement any business function that's trying to displace developers, then it gets a little more problematic until determine what the business case might be. So if this platform was, $100 per user per month, and you have 1,000 users, then it's going to be hard to say that the future use of this, no code, low code thing is valuable to my organization. I agree with that.
I mean, maybe. Can you get $100,000 in value from a low code, no code platform? You could. Is it the right way to look at it to displace developers? No, probably not.
Right.
Right? Like a good software developer doesn't develop software. A good software developer thinks programmatically, thinks systematically, and designs to that thought.
Right.
Right? You need that thought process. The difference between good use of AI and bad implementation of AI is a lack of system and programmatic thinking. Right?
Right. And that it's exclusively an end user point of view instead of a all user point of view, whether it's development all the way to end user.
Well, but also, like, the average person is not required to think systematically about what they do, why they do it, how they would do it, how to explain it to a child, right? But that's in fact what a good software developer is supposed to do, because they start with wide open spaces and have to build a framework and then build an application that someone's going to live in to achieve an outcome. And that requires that programmatic, systematic thinking. Humans aren't built that way. Not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So to think that the best thing you can do for your organization is bring in AI software developers and lay off software developers is wrong. Now, does every software developer think that way? Absolutely not. Right? So are there software developers that are in fact code monkeys? Yeah, there absolutely are software developers that are code monkeys. And it's incumbent upon all of us to think about what is the value we provide to our organizations, and does that actually have value in an AI world? And I would argue that the answer isn't necessarily fewer developers. The answer is more quality from the developers you have. Replace developers with any word you would like to use, right? And as long as those people are curious, as long as those people are creative, and as long as those people provide value, that's where we need to be focused. And let AI do the things that aren't valuable.
That was a deep dive side conversation.
It was.
If we bring it back to Carlos's question, of the dozens and of conversations I've had with sort of, I'm going to call it maturity conversations with customers and prospects, it's all over the place. I'm not sure I can see consistency. So I see frequently they describe it as people productivity. I see frequently they would describe it as process productivity. I would see very mature technology companies who've done a lot of technology POCs and implementations. And I've seen the edge cases where they have 600 to 1,000 models in place and are very mature in terms of its action, right? These are the big telcos, banks, governments, people with that billion-dollar IT budgets, right? So I'm not sure I've seen any real consistency other than they've yet to describe their maturity. They've only done projects. I think that's very consistent. Is they had a bunch of projects in mind. They've done a couple projects. They've got marginal success with those projects, but it hasn't been for a purpose. It hasn't been described formally in any way. It's just been interesting ideas to which they've implemented.
Sure, they've had successes, but does success equal maturity? I'm not sure that it does.
I absolutely don't think it does.
Right? I think without a strategy, it doesn't equal maturity. That doesn't mean it can't rapidly become maturity, right? But it requires that strategic focus around what is our purposeful view of whatever the thing is that really creates maturity. And all of your successes help lead you down that path of maturity and can accelerate it, as can your failures, right? As we always say, success pays and failure educates. Every one of those successes has 10 failures behind it.
So how will we define a company that, I don't think that anybody right now could say that they are mature or that they have a maturity model for AI. What will it define probably a little bit of a pathway that a company can be taking to try to start building that maturity model or that enablement towards AI for the company?
Well, I mean, it's funny that you should mention that because while we are recording that, Paul and I are going back and forth on a short, small, tight document I wrote. It's 128 pages.
Measured in hundreds of pages.
Right? In fairness, 100 of those pages are technically classified as the appendix.
Also true.
Right? But like I saw that problem a while ago, that there really was no maturity model for generative AI, and maturity models are best when they're just a framework, right? They give you some consistency when organizing large teams toward a goal. That's really all a maturity model needs to do. It needs to be just specific enough to give you the things that you need to do, but not so specific that it shoehorns you somewhere. And as I looked to vendor maturity models, what I found was most of them were just, you get greater maturity by adopting more features. Has nothing to do with the value you would get, has nothing to do with mapping it to your organization. It literally just has to do with, if you have feature 7 turned on, check this box. At the end, the more of those boxes you have checked, the higher the maturity.
Right. Very platform centric as per your previous rant.
Right. Not it's like Pokemon where the purpose is just to catch them all, but not to evolve any of them.
Right.
That's a good one.
I like that. So just occurred to me right now. I'm really happy with that particular metaphor. And so I sat down to go, okay, well, I see a lot of stop starts, I see a lot of failures, and I see a lot of experimentation directly to production with no maturity cycle. And so thinking about the problem, I created as little of a monster as I could, but ultimately it's a big project, right?
Mhm.
How do you define maturity in something that is as comprehensive as enterprise generative AI?
We took, without a model in place, now that we have a model from Mr. Holton, without a model in place, the conversations we've had with customers and prospects has been enablement centric. So think of it this way. Imagine a single picture that has 5 parts. Part number 1, how much are you willing to spend? Right? Think of this as strategy. Is this $100 exercise for you, or is this $1 million exercise for you? Box number 2 is we think there should be some guardrails. Those guardrails are policy. Those guardrails are decision making. Those guardrails are governance philosophically, right? So those are the first 2. And then of the $100 you want to spend, are you going to spend it in the bucket of education? Are you going to spend it in the bucket of build? Or are you going to spend it in the bucket of embed or distributed widely between those 2, to which we would generally refer to as an enablement model? But a single picture. It doesn't have dimensions. Well, it has 2 dimensions. It doesn't have 3 dimensions.
Right.
It's 2 dimensions to simply say, how much money do you have? Do you have the least amount of constraints you need to start? And then if you're going to put time and energy in a place, where's the place you would put it? And at least that's the kickoff, right? Because we encounter a lot of customers to say, well, I've got hundreds of ideas, but I don't know what to do first. And yes, you should probably narrow that window a bit. But as we all know, any 400 ideas, 350 of them are analytics, right? It's just BI.
That is 100% true.
Right.
350 of them you can absolutely get with the data that you have and a nifty little dashboard.
Right. And of the remaining 50, 30 are probably just out of the box machine learning, right? Segmentation, classification, I can enable that. Of the 20 left, 15 you can't afford, right? They're just complex, big, ginormous things that you think are great ideas, but you don't have $1 million. And then the 5, completely doable, 100%. Right. Let's make those true, right? I can put it in production. It's not years in the making. I can measure it. There's an ROI associated with it. Great. Those are all good things. So getting to the 5 is the framework. Where we struggled was where Howard came in, right? Where we struggled to say, now that we've come to the conclusion of where you should start, the real question begins is where you want to be, right? So now I have to describe not only the capabilities I have to have and where I am in those capabilities, but where I intend to be in those capabilities in a certain series of maturity levels. And that's the 130-page document that helps us work with customers to say, let's do both of those things. Where are you now? And I know of the 8 capabilities, you only have 2 of them, right? In any real way, right? And then, you're starting at level 0 and you have a goal of level 4, but I'm telling you, you probably only need to be 2.
Right.
Right. Depending on the capability, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So that's what's the most intriguing to us is we get to have the next step, because there was no step there. There was no, I agree with Howard completely. Any of the models we've seen before has been platform or technology specific, which doesn't help because, of course, there's lots of tools and technologies and people in the organization, right? Even Pythian. Yes, we have Google technologies implemented, but Atlassian is our ERP.
Right.
I'm telling you that we use Rovo pretty systematically in our organization for AI, right? Because it's embedded within the suite to which we use. We are a Salesforce CRM. I guarantee that we're using Einstein AI as part of our process, right? Those are fine. And you have to convince yourself and others in the organization that those are good uses of AI. And because the maturity model isn't technology specific, I can create capabilities that's not platform dependent. So back to Howard. Was that the intention? Like, is the Pythian use of our clients the intention of this model?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Right. The hard thing is to go. I want to do this thing, but I don't know how to get there. I don't even know if I have the things in the right place to get there. And that a good maturity model gives you a framework to go, well, in order to do that thing, I need to be a 4. I'm a 0, I'm a 0.5, I'm a 0.6 today. What are all the things, what are the boxes I have to fill in? What are the capabilities I have to add to my organization? What's reasonable and what's real? And then what does a map look like to get there? And the point at which the overwhelming starts, you stop and you go, cool, I'm overwhelmed at 1.7. Therefore, I can only do things up to 1.7. When we get to 1.7, right, then you'll have a whole different level of overwhelmed, and you go, cool, that's where we're going to go, and that's where we can get to, and that's what we can actually do. And it gives you a rubric to do the two things. One, you can create these North Star things and go, well, this is what it's going to take to get there. Do we, as an organization, actually have the stomach for it? Do we have the temperance for it? Right? Is that an investment we're willing to make? Yes or no? Doesn't actually matter what the answer is. There's no right or wrong answer. The right answer is whatever's right for you as an organization. And then the second thing is it provides a roadmap. Well, cool. If I can only get to 1.7, then let's look for projects that fit a 1.7. And I promise there's an infinite number of them. Right? And
you've used partial numbers. Is your 6-level maturity model created in such a way that you can be in between levels?
Yeah, you absolutely can, right? If you trying to reduce it to one number is really hard. That's why I use in between numbers, because what you actually are is like within the dimension of security and governance and storage and infrastructure, you're going to have different maturities. Like you don't need to get everything to a 3.
Right.
Like your organization may be highly regulated, in which case your AI governance probably needs to be a 4 to even really meet the regulatory requirements and start. But you may not have huge data sets that you're starting with. So your infrastructure and storage may not need to be that high. Right? Your data quality.
In any one dimension, do you have to be a finite level? Or
that is correct. You have to be a whole integer at any individual level.
Okay.
In order to get to the next level, you would have to complete all of the things necessary for that level. You don't get partial credit.
So 1.7 is a summary of the model versus okay.
Correct. 1.7 is across all, I think it's 8 dimensions.
8 dimensions, yeah.
Right. So it's across all 8 dimensions. It would average out to a 1.7.
Is there a difference if the company have different sets of technologies to be able to get to that maturity model? Meaning, if it's a smaller company versus a mid-size versus an enterprise, does it make a distinction or?
It does. That's why there's so much in the appendix, right? So the appendix goes through the different kind of industries, the big industries, right? We're not getting into high detail, and some of the nuances that are important for those industries, and then same for organization size, right? Because there is nuanced differences in the size of an organization and how easy or hard this could be to adopt, but also kind of general guidelines of if you're a Fortune 100 and you're in finance, like combining those two things, the goal is for that to provide you some guidelines and a rubric of what this will look like. Also, there is nothing that says that you have to apply it to your entire organization, right? You could absolutely say this one piece of our business, we actually need them to be fairly mature. We're going to invest there. However, you'd be foolish to not then go, cool, we now have the tip of the spear within our maturity of generative AI, and therefore we're going to follow the lessons we learned from there and drag the rest of the organization along, as a conga line. It doesn't even have to be, there first and then everybody else is at the same level, right? You can drag them along. Just don't remake the decisions. Like take the lessons and actually, view it programmatically.
Yeah, that's kind of the wonder of the model, and that we're able to apply it in big conglomerates that have multiple line of businesses. Each line of business has its own IT, and therefore they can have their own maturity. But you can also do it as a distinction between internal use of AI and product use of AI. The product use of AI might be far more mature than the internal use of AI, philosophically, because your organization might be 50,000 people. 45,000 of those are retail staff.
Right.
And so there's zero expectation that you have internal IT maturity of AI because the vast majority of people aren't using it in any real way. They may not even have email addresses.
Well, and probably shouldn't be.
Right.
Right. Like it's probably not an enablement you want to carry that far into the field.
Right.
Right. But to that point, if you're a global manufacturing company and you've got 40,000 employees, and all 45,000 of them, or most of them, let's say 85% have a commonality in the ERP that you all use, you probably want to lean into the ERP provided within the AI provided within that ERP first, rather than reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So if you think about most companies that you guys talk to, are they at an entry level, like maybe a zero, or are they in their journey toward it set? Where do you think that normally do you see them?
I would be willing to bet that if I were to apply the model to every company larger than 5,000 people with more than 500 million in revenue, so kind of just into what we would consider the solid enterprise range globally, I think scored all of them, averaged I think we'd find everyone's a 1.4, 1.5 kind of range. That would be my guess, right? Because again, we're taking the snapshot of the entire organization, comparing it globally. I think what you would find is, I don't even think it'd be a bell curve. I think it'd be a ski slope, right? I think you'd find most organizations far to the 0 and 1 side, with some organizations at the kind of 3 and 4 side. I think you'd really be hard pressed to find anybody between 4 and 5 organization wide. Right? I think even like a Google is probably not between a 4 and a 5 organization wide. I think pretty much everyone's probably going to be between 0 and 2, with some outliers in the 3s and some outliers kind of touching 4.
One could argue that I'm not sure it's even technologically possible to be a 5. That the maturity of AI isn't there to even be the best.
Sure.
Right. So it's an unachievable goal currently.
For sure. Right. Yeah. Maybe somebody like an OpenAI or a Claude, Anthropic is there.
Right.
Right. Because they are technically leading in many ways. Leading specifically means educating the market and contributing back to the space, to the technology in the field. And they do that.
But what they won't have is the organizational change control, right? What they won't have is they won't have the enterprisey dimensions.
For sure.
Because that's not what they do. It's not where they live, right? They don't operate like a bank, and therefore don't have the controls that a bank would need to have.
For sure. But they wouldn't be on the list anyhow, right? They don't have enough employees to make the list that they would be surveyed. It would be much easier for incredibly well-funded, incredibly small companies to be higher on that list, simply because they don't have the weight of age and the weight of size, right? Revenue is not size. Right. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a reasonable goal for any large organization to say they want to be, as a whole organization, that they really want to be more than a mid 2. Like, I just don't think that's reasonable. I think proactive is a really good place to be for large organizations. Now, that being said, there are places where you absolutely want to be a 3 or a 4, but they're very narrow.
Security? Is that...
I'm not sure cyber's prepared for it at all. You know what I mean? Like, when I look to the tools, that there's still early adoption. The next maturity model I'm already working on is a cybersecurity maturity model for a piece of cyber, not all of cyber. That's insane, right? You should never do that. I'm sorry for those that believe that NIST and MITRE are the way to go, but the reality is there's too much dimensionality to do that properly. So I'm going to take a piece of cyber and break that down, effectively exposure management through the lens of a data fabric, because that seems to be the way everything is going. And there's going to be just as many quick starts and stops in that as I think everywhere else, because you really have to understand what those requirements are and how to make that work for you.
I buy that. Of the dimensions in the AI maturity, is there superstars there in that list, or are they all equal in your mind? So
no,
I'll list them because everybody doesn't know. So core technology, storage, data quality, ethical AI, budgeting, AI governance, training, data security, change control, operational efficiency. Is there are they the same?
No. I mean, like, the easiest, probably, I'm going to take some guesses here, but probably the easiest one to get maturity in is actually storage. The storage vendors have been concentrating there for a long time. They've been paying attention. They're doing a good job. The one that I think is the most valuable is data quality. I think you'll see, like if I was to have one that was leading, where I invested more of my efforts to make sure that the organization was prepared for whatever it was able to kind of do, that would be where I would spend my time. I also think AI governance is going to be a really valuable and important kind of component. If you're not doing FinOps and you haven't really figured that out, budgeting is going to be a challenge. Right?
Which one was the last one added? Like the one you said, this is a great model, but I think it's missing insert.
So it's actually the splits that happened rather than the scope.
The levels.
Well, no, it was the splits. Like ethical AI and AI governance were kind of together. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it was as I kind of went through the process going, well, these actually are now starting to diverge. And I can't, I really struggled with how many dimensions are the right number of dimensions. And this is a lot of dimensions. There's no two ways about it, right? This is a lot. This is like 10.
It is a complex 3D model. 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also ended up being really complex as I was going through it. And frankly, I could have done 6 more. I could have split it out even finer, but I don't know that it would have helped. I think it would have just been even more like it's a pretty complex thing. It's not hard to do, right? But it is kind of complex. And I really struggled with at what point do these become separate dimensions? At what point do we have so much divergence? And with ethical AI and AI governance, the divergence was kind of at level 2.
Right.
We didn't have to get to level 3 or 4 before the divergence happened. It happened relatively early in the process because those things are distinctly different and yet so intertwined. Like if you're not doing AI governance, you're probably also not putting a lot of thought into ethical AI, but you can also do one or the other to different levels.
Right. That's how I was seeing it. Is you probably want to be more mature in your governance than necessarily in your ethical AI if the vast majority of your use cases are internal. As an example.
100%.
And therefore, clearly, a divergent makes sense.
Well,
because if you're trying to keep them at the same level, then you're investing too much in ethical AI in that circumstance.
Yeah, for sure. And that was kind of why they split out, right? Because when I thought about it, I'm concerned about ethical uses of AI, right? There's a ton of cases where we've used them for unethical things. At the same time, if you're looking internally and not looking at humans, right, then your concern around ethical AI and your investment in it should be relatively low. It can literally be a checkbox that says, we're not looking at data involving humans, and we're not using this externally. We're looking at machine data on like predictive maintenance as an example, right? We're looking at logistics, we're looking at our supply chain, we're looking at production, we're looking at whatever, right? That's a really good low ethical quandary use of AI, right? Those are all kind of good spaces. It's not bereft, it's not absent. I don't think anyone should be a level 0 because you as an organization have to consider it. But at the same time, that versus AI governance, the AI governance, you could have an immense amount of intellectual property in that use case where your ethical AI concerns are low, but the governance could be very, very high. The concerns there could be very, very high. And so, so that was the hard thing, was really going at what point is this too much? At what point is this too little?
Mm-hmm. Data quality, I think, is a great example there, where I constantly hear in the market, data quality needs to be table stakes. However, we all know, including the audience, is that the least mature implementation for you is data quality, right?
Yeah.
You have quality problems at source, let alone quality problems at destination, right? So it can't possibly be table stakes, or nobody would ever do AI if that was actually true, right? So the maturity becomes important because you're going to say at this level of quality is required to do this level of AI. That's helpful. Versus it has to be 5 or you can't do anything.
Sure. But that's also why you could apply it either direction, right? You can literally break down a project on the matrix as well and go, well, this project we'll just use data quality as an example, requires a data quality of 4 within the data sets that it needs. Cool. Do we have any of those could we say any of those are at a data quality level 4? Well, probably not. Okay, cool. Then this isn't going to work for us until we make that. So what can we do with where we're at now?
Right.
If we say, like, if you just took your most valuable data sets, the 25 most valuable data sets, and you only applied the data quality model, and you could absolutely have it as a standalone model if you wanted. It's not complete for data quality. That's not its purpose. It's how it fits. But still, it's a good model for that. And you just went, cool, all 25 of them have now been mapped, and here's where they fit. Now you then can go, cool, now let's look at AI that requires those maturity levels for those data sets and only those data sets. Cool, we just now opened up 25 new use cases. Right? So there's a lot of, I think, fall-on use for all of this. It's also important to note there are only 2 ways to get access to the model as of today. The first is to be a GigaOM Enterprise subscriber. All our Enterprise subscribers get access to our maturity models.
Nice.
And the second is to work with one of our partners, which today is only Pythian.
Even better.
Right?
That's awesome. And we look forward to it. I'll tell you where Pythian looks forward to it. Not only do we look forward to assessing sort of the maturity within our mutual customer base, but we look forward to helping you gather more data for its evolution, which kind of is my next question. If we do dozens of these things, 50 to 100 of these things, I got to think that's valuable input for V2.
100%. These are my goal is for these to be very living documents, every single one of them. I want to produce roughly 1 a quarter.
Nice.
For as long as GigaOM is around, or until we run out of topics, at which point we'll be maintaining several dozen of these as living documents and evolving documents. Things are going to change. You may be a maturity 3 today, let's just say, but next year, based on the evolution of AI, you may find that you're, a 1.9. I don't know that a shift would be that big, but you can kind of see where I'm going with that.
But even the model itself, we may find over doing dozens that we missed a dimension.
100%. The model may change substantially, right? We may also find that the reality is, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just going to pick these 2 to just pick 2. What we may find is core technology and storage tend to be paired, as in your evolution in one is also your evolution in 2. You don't tend to invest in one or the other, and so we tend to see those march side by side, and we might go, cool, let's combine those. It'll make it simple. But we also may say, ooh, we missed one entirely, or I could be an idiot and I could have just completely done one wrong, right? Like I could have just screwed one up and went, oh boy, like this, no one ever gets out of a 2, right? There's a lot more levels of maturity within 2 than I had intended. And so we now have to just rework the scale completely or drop it or whatever it happens to be,
Right. So we've got the dimension of evolving the model, whether it's the dimensions or the levels or the description of the levels, but also, which I think is the secret sauce amongst this entire model, which is what you described already, which is the size-based industry examples. So as we do dozens, 50, 100 of these, all of a sudden they become far more discrete, far more obvious, right? Far more applicable as a starter pack to say, listen, this is the template we're going to use right now, and we're going to judge you against this template versus starting from 0 every single time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, right? Yeah. If wishes were fishes and I could fill the boat, right? I would have actually combined the 2 to start with, because now they're discrete. The industries are discrete from the organization sizes. What I would have loved to have done is actually combine them, but it creates an exponentially larger number of outputs, and so I really also have to think about how would somebody use this to get the most from it. And I kind of there's not any fluff in 128 pages. I hate to say it, right? Like there's maybe 2 pages that's explanation, but everything else is really how would you apply this? Like there's things that we do that I'm very, very firm on. There's a whole dictionary. If I used a term, I define the term. I'm really firm on doing that. I really tried to do that as best I could so that no one had to make assumptions. When I say ethical AI, the definition of how I'm using that definition is in the actual document, right? I really tried to make sure that I didn't leave it up for wild misinterpretation, and so we all had something we could kind of stand behind. It was relatively hard to do.
Do you think there's a future that I could upload either access or content and it derives a maturity from me?
I do. I think I don't want to put a fine date on it, but I think we're some number of uses, right? Some fine tuning. Let's say version 2.5, right? We're at 1.0 now. And I expect there's going to be a 1.01 and a 1.2 and I think we're a little bit of ways away, but maybe a year
between now and artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, Yeah, right.
So we're on that.
The issue there is like I then have much more responsibility in that. Not only do I have to be correct, but I have to be. It is incumbent upon me to be a good steward of my customers' data. And so if
Right.
you're uploading data to me, not only do I have to return a result to you that's good, but I also have to do it in such a way where I'm retaining no data from that exercise.
Right.
Right. Like that can't be a secondary product for me. I believe, like, go back to that ethical AI. I believe that's not likely a good use of ethical AI. I also have to consider, like, what value does that provide back to the community? Is there a way to anonymize it in such a way that we're able to help the entirety of the community improve, while at the same time not being able to point back to any individual? Like, it's a really interesting thing when you start looking at those kind of data sets,
Mhm.
to be able to go, there is a tremendous amount of value to being able to go to your board and go, hey, like, when we look across our industry, the average company is at a 2.1 and we're at a 0.7. We're not investing. We are falling behind. Right. But that means everyone in the community has to agree that has value and they're willing to participate. Because the second you uncheck the box, right, then for me, the second you uncheck the box, I'm not telling you what the industry is at.
Right.
Either you participate and you get the value of participation, or you don't participate, you don't get the value of participation. You can't have it both ways, because it doesn't actually work.
So there's no future here of community sourcing, not open sourcing, but community sourcing, where
No, there absolutely is.
Okay.
Right. But you, in order to get access to the community data, you must participate in the community.
Sure.
You can't opt out and still get access to the data. Like, it does not fundamentally work. Too many companies opt out and you start to skew the results.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And the more iterations of maturity, the richer it becomes. So do it today, do it in 6 months, do it in 12 months. And then you
Correct.
get not only not only different versions per organization, different iterations per organization.
Right. And I'm super open too. So, like, if you see improvements that you'd like, if you see things I've missed, if you see mistakes, if you're like, hey, how come it doesn't do this? By all means, reach out. Right.
Just don't try to sell you anything.
That's true.
I like to always round it back to something.
No, that's a good one to round it back to.
Carlos, that was some rich content there.
That was really good. I had a ton of ideas and things about it. But I think that is interesting, the detail that we're going that I haven't seen anybody thinking about it in that way. And we have IT maturity models, but nobody is thinking about how it will impact with all these changes. So that will be very interesting to see how, when you start applying a poll and we start refining it and seeing where it goes from there, and how others may be able to participate. So to everybody that is listening to this, make sure that you double down. Leave us a comment. We'll see you on our next episode.